welcome back into another One Piece video. I know. Sigh, 3 poll videos in 1 week. What are you doing, man? Well, it's a break week, brother. You know, as of recording this, it is a break week, so there's nothing else to talk about. So I, of course, love holding polls, and I just want to go over the results because I think they are kind of interesting. And of course, it's a great topic piece. So, hopping into the very first poll of the night, I asked a very simple yet hard question. But I asked, what are you most excited for in One Piece? You can only pick one thing, right? Is it the Laughtale One Piece reveal? I put a picture of Roger there because he laughed at it. Next up, I have the final war. All of the Straw Hat final fights. Of course, it expands beyond that, right? We're going to get the Revolutionaries final fights, the Red-Haired Pirates final fights, etc. But yes, the final war in general was the second option. The third option was the Void Century flashback - the history of the world. And of course, the last one, which kind of seems mundane compared to the other three, is of course the God Valley flashback if we get the full scene, the full shot of it, because there's no guarantee that we actually will, right? Despite us getting a lot of Roxy Zebek, despite us getting a lot of Roger in the past couple of chapters, there is no guarantee that we will fully see God Valley. I know that right there might sound a little bit absurd, but really think about it, right? Will we spend, 10, 20 plus chapters at God Valley and see all of the fights play out one by one? I don't think so. So of course, out of all 4 of these options, this one's the most hazy one. This one, I'm not too sure if we're going to get. I bet we're going to get like more lore to it. I bet we're going to get the outcome of it, maybe the final blows, but I doubt Oda's going to spend a lot of time here. So yes, here are the results, and it looks like people are pretty split. Despite Laughtale One Piece winning, it's not exactly winning by a lot. It just goes to show that there's a lot in this final saga that people are looking forward to. So Laughtale, of course, got 36% of the votes. The Straw Hat final fights, plus all the final war, got 23%. Void Century got 27%. And then in last place, we have God Valley at 14%. Kind of insane, right? Because in this flashback, I think everybody does want something from God Valley. But in the grand scheme of things, God Valley is small in comparison to the Void Century, the Final War, and the One Piece reveal. So it's funny seeing God Valley lose in a poll. I never thought I'd see the day when this would happen, right? I feel like if I were to put God Valley against any other thing, it would win. But of course, right here, it's up against freaking behemoths. So, personally, I like to throw my personal opinion out there. I would vote for the final war. I'm sorry, guys. Hey, I'm sorry, y'all. Even though I've been with One Piece for, I think, like 18 years now, and the whole One Piece secrecy is huge in my mind. I think about this at least once a month. I think about Laughtale pretty damn often. I do want the final war. At the end of the day, I'm a meathead. I love fights. I love watching characters rise to the occasion, rise above and beyond. I think that's a better way to say it, right? I just love seeing fights, man. Still, to this very day, one of my favorite scenes in One Piece is when Luffy is on the ground against Rob Lucci, and Usopp is like, "Hey, Luffy, look at the sky, look at the sea, it's not hell. Get back up or I'm gonna fight Rob Lucci." And then Luffy does get back up, he tanks another blow, and he still beats Rob Lucci. That right there is one of my favorite scenes in all of One Piece. So yes, I am a little bit of a meathead. I love watching characters push beyond their limits and win battles. And as far as the final fights go, I do wonder who the matchups are going to be, right? Is it against the Blackbeard Pirates? Is it against the WG, Celestial Dragons? I just got to see it all, man. I am so freaking excited. And then, of course, we have like the Zoro-Mihawk matchup. Sanji's a weird one. I don't really know who Sanji's going to fight at the very end. For Usopp, people have Van Augur or Yasopp there. But, some of the other Straw Hats, it's like, okay, who's Robin gonna fight by the end of the story? What about Chopper? Nami? Frankie? Brooke? There's so much to uncover here. And then, of course, we'll have the Grand Fleet, the Revs, Dragon will finally fight. Oh my god, there's just so much in this final war that I would just love. And, of course, I didn't want to list it here because I feel like it's kind of adding too much to the final war, but of course we will see the ancient weapons as well. You know, Uranus, Pluton, Poseidon. So yeah, a lot here. So now real quick, let me just break down a couple of these and why they're all great options nonetheless. Even though I do pick Final War, I get why people want the One Piece reveal. I mean, hell, we're reading a series called One Piece. Of course people are going to pick this option, right? This right here is the main mystery. It's been a mystery for, what, like One Piece has been going on for like 27-ish years now? Yeah. People want to know what the joke is. What did Roger laugh at? What has Luffy been aiming towards? What did Joy Boy leave behind? That right there is a huge mystery. And personally, I am excited for it, right? Even though I picked the Final War, I am looking forward to this right here. And when it comes to what the One Piece actually is, I wonder if it will be a grand enough joke to where at least half the fan base would laugh. Because I'm assuming it's a joke, right? Roger going there and laughing immediately, the whole crew laughing. I'm assuming that Joy Boy left like a whoopee cushion, you know, maybe like a picture of Emu looking funny. I'm assuming that it's going to be something a little bit silly. Of course, there's going to be treasure there too, but the One Piece itself, it's got to be like some kind of old joke that Oda had, and that's it. Because Oda did say in an interview that the end goal has always been the same. The One Piece has never changed. So I am just really curious, like what joke has Oda been holding on to for 20 plus years at this point? So yeah, that's massive. As far as the Void Century History Flashback, what's really cool about this option in general, is that not only will we get the history of Joy Boy and Emu, but we'll come to find out what the world of One Piece looked like beforehand. What the world of One Piece looked like with all the tribes together, with that ancient city, with the, you know, giant karmic serpent and the other gods alongside Nika. Like, there's a lot of crazy things we could get from that. And then, of course, we could get a lot of parallels, right? People are expecting, you know, parallels of Iceberg, Luffy, Nami, etc. So yeah, I think this is going to be a lot of fun in general. And now for the last thing, we do have the God Valley flashback, and I think, you know, it goes without saying why that would be really exciting. You know, take everything I said about the Final War and apply it in a smaller scope with Rox's crew, Garp's gang, Roger's crew, and the Holy Knights, and yeah, there you have it, right? I think this could be fun. I know people have been talking about this for a while now, but I agree. The God Valley flashback, if we ever were to get the full thing, would be a great movie. Kind of like how we got the Dragon Ball Z Broly movie, a superhero movie, a Kimetsu no Yaiba movie, JJK movie. I really do think that if One Piece wanted to min-max money, oh my god, dude, easy slam dunk, right? Am I wrong? I do feel like the One Piece IP, you know, tangent. When it comes to One Piece and games-movies, I feel like they're not really putting in the effort. Dude, One Piece, massive, you know, they've got the money to swing around. If they really wanted more money, movie, before the series ends, game. I don't know what they're doing, brother. I really do not know. So anyways, time to look through the comment section and see what people are saying. This poll kind of popped off. Look at that. Almost 10,000 votes posted only 24 hours ago. Kind of insane. Top comment says, I want to see the war that makes Marineford look like a kid's game. Oda did say that. I don't know if he said kid game specifically, but he did say that it would make Marineford look smaller in comparison. Run D Pole, oh my god. Is that my nickname here? Run D Pole strikes again. But I'm seriously excited for the Void Century flashback because it'll hands down be the longest flashback in One Piece. Ooh. Oh man, you're not wrong. I'm looking forward to it, but this right here is something I'm kind of scared about, right? Because going into this flashback, we will not see the Straw Hats for a while. Unless Oda, like, interweaves the flashback within current day events, this flashback will be going on for at least a year, in my opinion. And imagine going an entire year without seeing the Straw Hats. We went 6 months without the Straw Hats during Egghead Island, when we cut over to Garp, we cut over to the Reverie, and etc. But this right here, brother, ooh, we're going to be gone for a minute. I'm thinking 20 plus chapters genuinely, because there's so much Oda has to cover. Joy Boy, Davy Jones, the First and Second World, Emu, Ancient Kingdom, etc. Yes, and also, it looks like Joy Boy has a whole ass crew, dude. Are we gonna see Joy Boy recruit Emeth? Joy Boy recruit Zunisha? Joy Boy fighting these battles against the 20 kings? Joy Boy traveling around the world to the 20 kingdoms, etc.? Like, oh my god. There's a lot for Oda to cover. Oh yeah, ancient weapons too. Yeah, you said ancient kingdom, but don't forget the ancient weapons. Like, we're gonna have to see the OG versions of them. And then even Galley Law. Oh my gosh, yeah. This is gonna be a massive, girthy flashback. There's just no way Oda will be able to give a satisfying flashback to the Void Century that answers all those questions in less than 20 chapters. I'd argue less than 50 chapters, honestly. Like, I'm highballing that one. The Final War. Oda said he was surprised that people liked something as, quote, small as Marineford so much. It's going to be a generational run, yes. And one thing to keep in mind, too, you know, we love Marineford, but get this. Marineford, not only was it small, quotation marks there, but it was also, what, decades ago at this point? Like, I think it genuinely was, like, 15 years ago. So, brother, imagine a war current day with all these extra characters and powers, you know, Oda leveling up as a mangaka. Yeah, it's gonna be insane. Not gonna lie, the most important thing to me is finding the answer to what the heck is the One Piece. Yeah, and I'm curious, man, when we get the One Piece reveal, will there be, I think there will be, but will there be a creator or a comment or some kind of Reddit thread that has accurately predicted what the One Piece is? Honestly, I think so. You know, I think the One Piece is one of the most guessed things in the entire series. I think everybody has their own theory about it. So I bet there's at least one person out there who was able to figure it out. Well, there is one person out there who does know, who's not a part of Oda's staff. It's actually a Make-A-Wish kid. I believe his final wish on this earth was to learn what the One Piece was, and I think Oda did actually tell them. Is that like a made-up story or is that real? Let me look it up real quick. Oh, look at this. A Reddit thread. The story goes like this. A kid with a terminal disease was asked what his last wish was to a foundation similar to Make-A-Wish in Japan. The kid asked that he wanted to know the ending of One Piece, so the foundation brought Oda himself to tell the kid the ending. When Oda saw that kid in his state, he accepted his petition and gladly told him the ending. Okay, is there like a resource? It's fake. All right. Well, I don't think it's real. Okay. Article from 2014. Best source, not English. Should I click the link? Let me see. I don't know. Well, this makes it sound like it's real, but I don't know this website. Jap Nation Animanga reports that Oda was glad to tell the kid how One Piece ends and that he was holding back tears upon seeing the condition of Hinata Fujinami. While Oda was fine with Fujinami learning about the One Piece ending, Oda requested to talk to the child alone so that the details of the One Piece manga ending wouldn't be leaked, while he jokingly pleaded to Hinata to not reveal it to the press. Okay. He was reportedly seen smiling but crying at the same time as he told the people that One Piece is beautiful. Smiling and crying. I'm assuming that's just because they got their answer, huh? Alright, so it looks like there's pretty mixed reports on whether or not that did actually happen, but me, wanting to be optimistic and maybe even a little bit gullible, I want to believe it. So, this one says, I'm gonna choose the closest one to our grasp right now, the God Valley flashback, because it looks like we're almost there, and I can't wait to see how that shit really went down. And yes, me too, brother, but like I said earlier, I just don't know if Oda's really gonna give us everything. Like, I just can't see him giving, like, a fleshed out battle to Barbell. You know, we're not going to see Shiki go from 100 to 0. I just don't think so. I hope so. Don't get me wrong. I hope so. But I feel like Oda's just going to zip past it, you know? We're going to see, like, a couple of clashes here or there, and then it's going to be, like, a flash in the pan. Like I said, I hope not, but I feel like that's what might happen. I'm mostly interested in the Void Century reveals the true meaning of the Will of D. Oh, yeah, that's another thing about the Void Century. Yeah, the Will of D. And learning about the ancient events described in the Harley text. Of course, the Final War and God Valley incidents will be hype, and Laughtale finale will be jam-packed with emotional moments and the payoffs from decades of following these characters. In Goda, I trust. The Void history was what got me back into One Piece after dropping it when I was a kid. The history of the world and all its themes are a masterpiece. I love this. You know, I think this is a prime example that everybody reads One Piece for different reasons. This guy loves history, right? This guy probably has like a bunch of history books in his room. This guy probably has a map of the world in his room. And I respect it. I really do. You know, like I said, One Piece is so all-encompassing that this guy can love One Piece, and I can love One Piece as a meathead, you know? Like, it's perfect. There's so many things to love about One Piece, and it's one of the few series out there, a little bit of a glaze on my part, it's one of the few series out there that can unite so many different people, right? There's people who like Dragon out there. Dragon, out of all characters, right now, they love that guy. Where did they come from? I don't know. I really don't, but One Piece did it. One Piece made a character for them. So yeah, you know, it's just great, man. And another thing I think One Piece doesn't get enough credit for is how diverse the cast is. You know, on one end we have the Revs, we have the Marines, we have the Holy Knights, and then we have like certain cities and countries in One Piece that for the most part are themed on real life countries and cities. It's like insane. It's so insane. All of the above, really. It's too tough of a question to pick just one. I specifically want to see the Void Sentry - Joy Boy flashback because I need to see Robin's reaction when she finally realizes her dream. I was a fan since 5 years old, 20 years ago. I need to know the One Piece that got me hooked in the first place. All of them. Greedy, huh? I said pick one, brother. Final War, but not for all the strat fights. Oh, moreover for Blackbeard and or Emu to show their true power. Right now, to me, Luffy seems too OP. I'm excited to see what these final bosses have in their kit to challenge Luffy. Yeah, I'm very mixed on Luffy being OP. I think he is OP, don't get me wrong. I'm not disagreeing, but I'm not one of those guys where I'm like, hey, he's a Yonko. You know, he can't lose anymore, y'all. No. Like I said, the reason I love the idea of the final war is because I want to see Luffy strive to be number one. I want to see Luffy fighting up. So Luffy being super OP right now and just, you know, dog walking Kizaru, dog walking Saturn. It's fun. Don't get me wrong. I think it fits. But at the same time, I'm like, damn, he's really not struggling anymore, right? Like, I wonder if we'll ever get another Rob Lucci moment where he's just on the ground, he can't move, and then, boom, last second, he gets back up. I really hope that's the case. And if there's a character to do that, maybe it's Blackbeard, maybe it's Emu, or hell, if Oda wants to get really crazy, maybe it's Shamrock or Garling, which, I don't know. It's weird, you know, I can't imagine Luffy fighting Shamrock or Garling. They feel like red-haired pirate opponents, or revolutionary opponents in a way. Like, I can't imagine the Straw Hats actually going against Garling. Like, it's such an odd matchup in my mind. All of it. Oda has to deliver, and I don't know how. Oh, he said ho. I don't know ho. He's going to thread it all, but I hope it's even better than we imagine. One Piece reveals the secret that kicked off the pirate era and could explain stuff like Joy Boy, the Void Sentry, and the Will of D. Whatever's there might flip the idea of freedom on its head and show us something way deeper. It's the kind of moment that could change how we see everything in One Piece. That is true. That is true. As a manga reader, I am more interested in lore, so a Void Sentry flashback will be peak. Yeah. It looks like, you know, all of these options are getting a lot of love, right? You know, to be fair, I played the devil here. I gave y'all too many good options. And like I said, there's not exactly a right pick here. These are all just phenomenal. And one thing that's really crazy to think about is that we're in the final saga. You know, One Piece is, quote, in its final stretch, so we're going to get these sooner than later, right? We are closer to the end of One Piece than the start. So, on to the second poll, and this video might be going on for a while. Let me see here. Okay, we'll tackle the next two, and then we might call it. Because these are pretty hefty ones too. But this poll says, what is Emu - where do their powers stem from? So before we get into the options, I just gotta say it right here. But 4 options max is not enough. You know, I wish I had like 7 more slots where I could just throw things in. Maybe I could even add in all of the above into this poll list, but I can't. You know, YouTube is limited. I'm so sorry, guys. So I only had these to work with. And here's the thing too. None of these could be right. You know, the right option might not even exist here because we know jack squat, jack squat, about Emu. You know, to this day, they're still silhouetted. We do not know what the hell is under the blackness. So, out of these options, though, I put actual god. And, you know, people are saying, oh, Emu could be the devil. Okay. God, devil, we can put them all in this category right here. And that got 21% of the votes. Next up, I said that Emu is simply a devil fruit eater. They can, of course, be a god devil fruit eater, just like Luffy. That got 49% of the votes. Next up, I put magician dash real magic. That got 15%. And lastly, I put special race dash tribe, like celestial dragons or something else. And if it is celestial dragons, maybe they get some special powers from being a celestial dragon. This one kind of, you know, encompasses a lot right here. It's very deceptive, right? But yes, these are the results. So, on to my own personal opinion. I kind of have all these mixed together. You know, I think that Emu is from a special tribe. I think that Emu also has real magic. And I also think that Emu is a devil fruit eater. The one thing I don't think Emu is, though, is an actual god dash devil. This one I'm like hazy on. I don't know. So, personal theory. You know, I've made multiple videos on this already. You've probably heard me talk about this in my review videos as well, whenever Emu pops up. But when it comes to Emu's design, I think that Emu is going to look like a flower person. Laugh it up. Go ahead, get the giggles out. Go ahead and jump into the comment section and say, Sai, what the hell are you talking about? But here's the thing. You know, Emu, whenever they're in the flower room, which, you know, he has a flower room. That's a little bit odd, right? Emu is being surrounded by butterflies. Butterflies are constantly jumping and suckling on Emu's fingers. Why is that? Why is Emu constantly being sucked off by butterflies? Well, I'm just going to the theory that maybe they're just a plant person, which sounds absurd at first. I get it. I really do. But we have had some weird plant people in One Piece already. Look at Crocus. Crocus, for some reason, has a flower sprouting out of his neck. Do we question it? No, we don't. Noland, for some reason, has a chestnut growing off of his head as well. Why? Why is that a thing? We have no clue. Nobody's ever asked Noland. Absurd. That would be my first question to Noland. Like, hey, what is up with that thing? Will it ever, I don't know, sprout? And next up on the list for people with flowers is, of course, Baron Omatsuri from One Piece movie 6 or 7. One of those numbers, 6, 7. Baron Omatsuri has a flower on his shoulder named Lily. Lily is, I don't even know what kind of flower it is, but Lily has the power to make its user live forever. And it does this by siphoning lifespan, by eating people's souls. And if I really wanted to stretch things, I could say that's kind of what Emu is doing current day. And is it a coincidence that Emu is obsessed with a girl named Lily, and that's also the name of the flower from the movie? I don't know. You know, that's a crazy coincidence right there. And last but not least, in One Piece, we have a pirate gang called the Tulip Pirates. And those pirates all have flowers growing out of their head. And that's just my whole thing there. I think that Emu's going to be like a part plant person. I think they will still look humanoid, but I think they're just going to have a lot of plant features to them. And I do think that right there could explain why Emu is constantly in the flower room, and why the flower room does have this natural sunlight in it. Maybe Emu needs sunlight so that they can photosynthesize themselves. Sounds odd, but maybe, right? Hey, like I said, we don't know anything about Emu. That's my own personal opinion. And then as far as the devil fruit and magic angle goes, I do think that magic will be a thing in One Piece, or at least in the Void Century, and that Emu might just be the one and only magic user that is alive current day. You know, people might look at this option and think it's really odd, but go back to One Piece Romance Dawn, one of the early prototypes to One Piece. Oda put magic in the series. Oda actually put magic in the series alongside devil fruits. Magic and devil fruits were two separate things in OG One Piece. So I do think that Emu will personify that. I think Emu will show that magic and devil fruits can exist in the same series. And then as far as what devil fruit Emu has, I'm going to keep it simple. I think they have the moon god devil fruit. And the reason why I believe that is because I think that's the perfect opposite to the sun god Nika fruit, right? Sun god Nika, well, here's the moon god. And of course, I feel like in a lot of fantasies, you always have the sun versus the moon. So boom, I think that is going to be the slam dunk right there. And one thing that really ties it all in is that Emu, when you break down their name, E and then Mu, that is 1 and 6, 16. And 16 is a prominent number in Hindu because they believe that the moon has 16 phases. And it doesn't stop there, but the celestial dragons, whenever they shoot people who cross their paths, they shoot them 16 times. Not just that, but the Oxloid bell is also rung 16 times to symbolize the new year. And then not just that, but Doflamingo, his final attack was the 16 holy bullets. And then there's Mihawk. This is a crazy theory, but if you believe that Mihawk is a celestial dragon, then this is usually what people go to. But Mihawk, in a One Piece video game, has an attack called 16-Day Moon as well. So, yeah, I feel like the number 16 is going to be very important. Kind of like how 5-6 Gomu is important to Luffy, Emu is important to Emu, and I think that's because of the moon. So that is what I believe right there, out of the way. And now, enough of me, time to get into the comment section and see what people are talking about. So I went ahead and said this right here. If you think Emu is a demon-devil, I'd consider that in the category of actual god. Apologies, I didn't put like god-devil. I didn't think about that when making this poll. Like I said, there's just too many options for Emu, man. I couldn't help myself. This one says, if it's a devil fruit, I believe it will be the ink fruit, capable of changing the pages of the manga itself. That may also be why Oda put that picture of Emu at his desk. Alright, so the ink devil fruit theory. This is a theory that has been around the block for quite some time. It's a theory that I personally really enjoy. I even have a thumbnail of Emu depicted as an ink monster. I am really on board with this. But here's what I have to say about it. I think that it doesn't have to be the ink devil fruit. I think you could easily tack this on to a god devil fruit. So in my personal theory, I do think that if Emu was the moon god, just like Sun God Luffy, I think that Emu will have, these Looney Tunes abilities. He'll be able to change the pages of the manga. And one thing that I could, headcanon, one thing that I could already imagine is Luffy and Emu fighting, and they run through the panels. Maybe they punch each other, and then Emu flies to the next page, or Luffy flies to the next page, etc. I think that can all be encompassed in a god devil fruit. But if we wanted to go back to OG Paramecias-Logias, the inking fruit is not a bad idea. I do like the idea that Emu has the ability to change things like that at will, right? Changing pages of the manga, all that fun stuff. And what's really cool too is I think Oda will go this route, because going back to when the Reverie was happening and the Revs attacked it, Karasu, who has the Sut no Mi, he has an attack called Obelisut, and in the panel where he's doing this, Oda actually draws his fingers going outside the manga panel. I don't think Oda's done that very often. So yeah, I think that Oda will get more and more fourth wall breaking as the final saga progresses, and I think that'll be really fun. Oh yeah, and then as far as like Emu being at Oda's desk, I think Oda was having a lot of fun with that, but this is another way to look at it, right? Saying that Emu will change the pages of the story itself, which I don't think is a bad theory either. It kind of goes back to when Emu was deleting Leloucia. Because when Emu did that, they got a map out and they actually marked it off. And it feels like an odd thing to do. For example, if I were to, blow up a Costco. Not gonna do that, hypothetical. Costco, don't come after me. If I were to blow up a Costco, I wouldn't go on Google Maps and then, put an X over Costco. I wouldn't do that. So it does feel a little bit odd. So, maybe if it is like the ink no Mi, maybe they did awaken it to that extent to where when they draw certain things, they get destroyed, or maybe something about it changes. which I think could be fun. I would love a great depiction of the Ink no Mi in One Piece. If Emu doesn't have it, I want somebody else to have this devil fruit, because let me tell you, the only other utilization of ink-based abilities I've seen in manga or anime was from Sai in Naruto. And I hate that I share his name, because Sai, let me tell you, Sai is so disappointing in Naruto. One of the worst characters out there, man. I did not care for his backstory, his appearance, his powers, nothing about Sai or Demon. I literally, to this very day, still view him as Timu Sasuke. Rant aside, they could literally just be the devil incarnate. That could be it too. They could just be the devil incarnate. Emu is an alien from outer space. Leo, my guy. I like this theory. So when it comes to outer space in One Piece, we do know canon information, but aliens do exist. Space pirates do exist. And we know this from Enel. You know, Enel went to the moon, he saw the automaton, he saw these weird space pirates, he fought them, he won. So, Emu being from outer space, I do not think is a bad theory. It may seem ludicrous, it seems crazy to say this out of nowhere, but there is some reasoning behind it. You know, and one thing to keep in mind too, is that technically Enel, Gadatsu, Aruj even, like, all of those boys, all the Birkins, they're technically aliens. They spawned on the moon, and then they came to Earth, and they lived on the Sky Islands. So, you know, you could argue that we've already seen aliens in One Piece. And I don't know if you guys follow the Japanese versions of One Piece as well, but on the back covers, I don't know if Oda still does this, but at least in the early volumes of One Piece, Oda used to draw like a map of the world, and on that map, he would draw Panda Man just kind of swimming around, or, you know, Panda Man on this island, that island. And in one of those, they showed Panda Man being abducted by a UFO and talking to aliens. So it's not like absurd per se. So I do like the theory that Emu is an alien. You know, it's not bad, right? You know, like I said, there's nothing we really know about Emu. You know, I always like going into theories with an open mind, especially when it comes to a character like Emu, who we know pretty much nothing about. All right, so this comment from Daniel Campbell says, something once human changed by a devil, like a person who made a bad deal, got possessed or cursed or something. The book in Spawning Weapons was straight up magic, yeah? It is straight up magic indeed. N1997 says, I think Emu may just be a genuine demon or possessed by one. Blackbeard said that the Yami Yami no Mi can pull in the devil's power. He never mentioned devil fruit powers in Japanese. The devil he refers to should exist, right? Devil fruit powers may be an actual devil's attempt to mimic the power of a god. Perhaps there are actual gods and devils in One Piece, like Oda implied about Todd Musica. On the topic of actual gods, the Joy Boy of the First World may have been an actual god. Yes, so for people who might not know what he's talking about right here, in the Japanese screening of Film Red, Oda attended that screening, and, you know, obviously there's not, like, written reports of it. I'm sure you could, like, look it up, though. But Oda did say that there are demons like Tot Musica in the One Piece world already. So will we ever see them? I don't know. But yes, a Tot Musica-esque demon does actually exist in the world right now. And keep in mind, you know, when it comes to these movies, there are always aspects of those movies that later become canon to a certain extent. And the guy who made Film Red, right, Oda was there, but the main guy who wrote it, he actually knows the ending to One Piece. You know, he is Oda's right-hand man, he knows everything about One Piece, the Final War, etc. So the fact that he brought in Tot Musica, this musical demon, I think means something. So they go on and they say, I believe that gods and devils will exist, and the origin of Haki will be tied to religions and philosophies. Most named attacks by swordsmen are related to some sort of religion, Roger with Shintoism and Zoro with Buddhism. Every religion offers a way to transcend death. Perhaps Blackbeard is related to transcending death itself, and that's why Zoro had an encounter with death on Wano, and why he awakened the birth of all things when he was in a state between life and death. Emu could either be somebody who looked for enlightenment and reached it, or he got too close and was fooled by a demon during his pursuit. I like this. I think this is the second or third person who's mentioned possession in this comment section. But that is personally a theory I've not really thought of too much. You know, when it comes to Emu possessing other people like Queen Lily or some random girl to live forever, sure, I'm on board with that. You know, I've had those thoughts before. But this right here, Emu being possessed by a demon, that's never come across my board. And I do think that makes sense. And that could put Emu in a position where they're going to be... what's the right way to say this? A sympathetic villain. Like maybe halfway in, we're like, wait, we're fighting Emu, but the real Emu, this isn't him. Or, you know, the real Emu is also fighting back and they don't want to be possessed. I like this a lot. No, I think this is beautiful. And maybe this could explain the whole Joy Boy thing. Maybe Joy Boy and Emu actually knew each other in the past and they were good friends. Maybe Emu was Joy Boy's right-hand swordsman. And then, of course, like you said, maybe Emu got too close to enlightenment and then he got possessed by a demon. And, you know, Emu and Joy Boy could have been like, you know, they could have been like this. We don't really know. But I do think that by the time, this is my headcanon, but I think when we learn the truth about Emu, I don't think it's going to be as simple as, oh, Emu's a villain. Or, ooh, Emu is pure evil. I think there's going to be something about Emu that we can look at and say, oh, like, he was a good person, and then he later became a villain, tragically. But, like I said, that's just me. Edit. I'm waffling, okay? Mihawk Sword, Yoru, is translated as night. What must end as the dawn comes. Night, 14 years ago, in a Usopp gallery, Oda described Mihawk as being someone who gazes upon a force that transcends strength itself. In order to gaze past strength itself, you must be at the pinnacle. Emu may have not achieved a black blade, but he went even further than that. He reached a black body. No, this is not Virgo's full body. That's just a mere imitation of Emu's dark glory. But on a more serious note, it seems Emu is being transcendent of law-reason, Mu, which would explain him telling that to Dorian Broggy. Yeah, I like that. I like the comment. WWWE. Emu is a devil that took control of their host's body. I'm convinced that he took the power Nika had, just like Blackbeard did to Whitebeard. If Emu is a, quote, actual god, and Joy Boy's hockey alone had him shook, ... Hey, it could happen, man. You know, Joy Boy could be a god himself. Well, maybe not. I'd prefer Joy Boy wasn't a god, actually. I like him just being the OG pirate, the Jack Sparrow of the verse. It's two things, magic and lineage. Emu species have the ability to consume things and take on their aspect through symbiosis. Emu had consumed the Eve Tree, gaining its magical abilities. The light that comes from the Eve Tree's roots comes from below. The roots are tapped into the Forbidden Star. Those roots carry the Forbidden Star's energy up to the flower room, where Emu absorbs it. Normally, the Eve Tree would absorb that energy, but since Emu assimilated the tree, he is now able to tap into the roots. Funny enough, kind of lines up with me talking about Emu being a flower. Alright, if Emu was a flower person, they could technically absorb a tree and get powers through assimilating sunlight. Photosynthesis. So, that is it for this poll. We will tackle one more. We've been going on for a minute now. But this poll says, how will Gunko-Emu be dealt with in Elbaf? 4 options here. Thankfully, I don't think there's any more options than these, but we'll see, right? One Piece is kind of unpredictable. Option 1, we defeat them. Look at that, dude. I'm proud of y'all. I'm happy that this is so low. I'm glad not a lot of people think we're going to beat them. I hope we don't, man. If we beat one of the final 2 villains outright here, even if they're in this Gunko body, I'd be a little bit disappointed. I really would. I don't know, man. I feel like with how much hype they're getting, the whole, oh, you know, Rox knew we couldn't do anything, so he left. Like, coming off of all that, if we beat even a weakened Emu here, my heart would break. My heart would break. Emu would go down a couple of spots on my list. In terms of, like, favorite characters, man. Oh, man. So next option says, sever the Emu connection. This is winning by a large margin, 68%. And personally, that is also what I'd vote as well. This one says, Emu has to leave early. We don't know why. Maybe somebody shows up to the flower room. Maybe Emu has to poop. Which I will say, you know, as somebody who has IBS, you know, I often have to leave as well. Sometimes during League of Legends matches. I'm so sorry, team. I've been banned in League of Legends before because I just really had to poop. Let me tell you, brother, IBS is just, it's the worst. It's the worst. Last option, Emu actually wins here in Elbaf, and then they just simply leave on their own. That would be a crazy one. If Emu wins, ooh, that would be scary. You know, I don't want to defeat them, but them winning, like, that's not a bad option. I kind of lean towards that too. But, of course, like I said, I do lean towards Emu's connection being severed. The reason why is because we know that Gunko, well, we don't know for sure, but it seems like Gunko is a good person, right? Judging from that brief interaction between Brook and Gunko, Gunko doesn't exactly want any of this, right? Like, it seems like Gunko has 3 personalities right now. We have the Gunko that knows Brook and is lovey-dovey. Well, okay, lovey-dovey, put that in quotation marks, that's just a weird assumption. We also have the Gunko who is a holy knight, right? That is the Gunko we've known up until this point. And then most recently we have the 3rd personality, which is Emu Gunko, which is like a mixture between the two. I think if Gunko really fights back on the inside, maybe if Brook lands a couple of soul-slashing attacks, or maybe if Brook plays some music and the Gunko inside starts waking up, we can't sever the connection. Or maybe Luffy, his hockey, is going to pull a Joy Boy, right? Joy Boy back on Agate Island, boom, hockey blast, Emu was shaking, the Gorosei got knocked back. Maybe that could even sever the Emu connection. Or maybe Luffy liberates Gunko by beating their ass, right? I think there's a lot of ways to sever this connection, and I think that is why this option is so prominent. And of course, if the connection is severed, then that wouldn't exactly be an Emu L, right? Emu is fighting against the current. Emu has, you know, Wi-Fi that's just not working. Gunko is fighting back, which, you know, funny enough, reminds me of JJK, Megumi. I get it, you know, the Megumi defenders come out, they're like, oh, Sai, he's depressed, his sister, Sai, oh my god, he has nothing to live for. I don't care. Lock in, dude, what do you mean? Oh, he's depressed, he can just slouch all day. No, dude, get the hell up. I hope Gunko does that. I hope Gunko does fight back a little bit. You know, show me something, Gunko, please. So yes, I think these are all great options. The only one I don't want to happen is us just straight up beating them. If we beat them, I just think that'll look bad. And the funniest thing too is that I don't even think Emu is going to be the final villain. Maybe I'll hold that poll next. Funny enough, we're having so many polls here. But yeah, I don't even think Emu's going to be the final villain. I think it's going to be Blackbeard. You know, I think Blackbeard is going to be that guy. But even then, I still don't want Emu to get babied. That's my personal bias. But then again, like I said, you know, I'm a meathead, man. I want these battles. I think that's why I don't want it. So, on to the comments now. This says, someone will get inside Marineford, forcing her to sever her connection with Gunko. That could be it. Right now, Marineford is on fire. So, maybe if somebody shows up to the flower room, Emu's like, hey, I got a dip. And personally, I do like the idea that Blackbeard is going to do it. Like, Blackbeard shows up, and they're sitting the same way Roxy Zebek was sitting with the gun pulled out. And yeah, there we go. That could force Emu to go back home. I will say, though, that it would be kind of sick, you know, aura farming territory, if Emu confronts Blackbeard and confronts Elbaf at the same time. Like, imagine if the connection doesn't sever, and Emu's doing 2 things at once. That'd be crazy. So, the next option says, what if the Straw Hats win and save Gunko, but Gunko dies because her lifespan caught up with her? That could happen. Yeah, no, I think that's pretty solid. Or, you know, aside from this, maybe if the Straw Hats win, Emu's like, hey, Gunko, you're no longer useful to me, and then they pull a Saint Saturn on them, right? Saint Saturn, miles and miles away, disappointed Emu. Emu simply just lit them on fire and they died. That could happen too. The God Knights need a win. Otherwise, there's no need of improvement from the opposing side. I do like the idea that the God Knights win. I think if the God Knights win and they capture the kids here in Elbaf, then that would be a solid reason for the Straw Hats and Loki even, and Hyrutin and even the Giants to go to Marineford and fight these guys. Because right now, Luffy has no reason to go there. He really doesn't. You know, unless they have a poneglyph, Luffy has no reason to go to the Holy Land as of, you know, chapter 1157. So yeah, I would like it if they won here. That would send us into the final war potentially, but we will see. We'll see about that one. This one says, I think it needs to be severing the Emu connection, because then we'll get the Brook and Gunko lore. Everyone thinks Dragon is attacking the Holy Land, but after that rock stuff, I definitely think it's Blackbeard sneaking in with Katarina. Yeah, I'm so mixed. This'll be another poll, you know, spoiler alert, another poll. But I do like the idea that Dragon and or Blackbeard are doing it. I'm kind of leaning towards Blackbeard right now, but we'll see. After the connection is broken and Gunko returns and gets their senses, I could see us getting an emu. Oh, an emu flashback. Yeah. Yeah, Gunko could explain what the hell's been happening. Like, hey, you know, when I was a kid, I got kidnapped. And, well, no, they're part of the main Meyer family. Yeah, wait, Gunko was always a celestial dragon. Never mind. Hey, I was a celestial dragon and I walked into the flower room and I got recruited to be Emu's vessel. That could be it. Then again, you know, just because Gunko has the Man Meyer Celestial Dragon family name, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're blood related. Like, for all we know, Gunko could have been adopted, right? Gunko could easily have been adopted, but we'll see about that one. Maybe, not the Void Sentry, but a little bit from Gunko's POV. That'd be nice. I do wonder if Gunko will retain any of those memories, because I forgot what anime it was, but there is an anime where a character gets unpossessed, and they're like, hey, you know, what's the 411? What's the intel? And they're like, yeah, 1 minute I was over here, and then the next minute I'm over there. So, yeah, there is a chance Gunko might not know anything, but I do think Gunko will have the lore, personally. And maybe, here, we're getting a little bit dark, but maybe while Gunko is spilling the lore, that is when Emu is like, oh, and then Gunko catches on fire and dies. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, maybe Gunko is like, hey guys, like, blah, 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 blah. And let me tell you the most important thing about Emu. And then boom, Gunko's dead. That'd be awesome. That'd be a big W. I would love it if Oda did that. An interesting scenario would be Emu and Luffy having a conversation. He realizes there are two people, just like he did with Blackbeard. They come to an agreement that Luffy can't defeat Emu and that Emu can't win either in this vessel. The fight would be pointless to continue, as it'll only damage Elbaf with both sides and not gaining anything. Instead, a contract is made between the two. Emu leaves Elbaf, returns to Holy Land, promising not to harm Elbaf while Luffy's required to fight Blackbeard. Both sides gain from this. Emu eliminates the threat as Beck's son without lifting a finger, while Luffy attempts to save his grandpa and he hates Blackbeard. I like this. I mean, you're not wrong. You know, both sides do gain from this. But Luffy, to me, doesn't seem like a character that would negotiate. Like, you know, put any other character here. Put Shanks here. You know, I'd say, okay, that could happen. But Luffy making this agreement, I don't know. And then Luffy realizing he can't defeat an opponent. This hasn't really stopped Luffy in the past. I think even if Luffy sees the gap in power, I think he would still try to fight. That's the thing with Luffy, man. He just doesn't stop. You know, people hate the comparison, but he really is like Eustace Captain Kidd, you know? Even though he's outmatched, he still goes in for the battle. Like, I don't recall a single scenario where Luffy has seen a fight that he shouldn't win, and he's like, hey guys, like, I can't do this, right? I feel like Luffy always tries to rise above. But that's just me, you know? Overall, like I said, any other character, I could definitely see this. Normally, I'd say we defeat Emu-Gunko, but after that brief Brook flashback, we have to sever the connection. Besides, Oda already stated that Rox was the first and only person who would ever make it to the flower room, which is most likely where Emu is right now. So even if Dragon is attacking Marineford, he's not getting into the flower room. So this isn't exactly true. Oda already stated that Rox was the first and only person who would ever make it in the flower room. They did not say that. They said that Rox was the only person to go there. They didn't say that nobody else would ever make it to the flower room. just in the context of the flashback from then till now, hasn't happened. But that doesn't say anything about the future of the story, right? This doesn't mean that Luffy can never go to the Flower Room, that Dragon could never do it, that Blackbeard could never do it. It simply says that nobody else has yet. As someone who has watched One Piece for about 18 to 19 years, faithfully and continuously, I can say without a shadow of a doubt that Oda will absolutely go to the Sever the Connection route. Totally makes sense. That's how we're going to get inside scoop of Emu and how to defeat them. She is going to take one of the Straw Hats hostage, and then game on. I have a feeling it might be Chopper, and then the crew's going to go mad. I like this. This right here could be another key reason why we go to the Holy Land. I don't think it's going to be Chopper, though. You know, if I had to put money on a character to get kidnapped, Nami. Kidnap Nami, please. Well, maybe not please. Well, it's a good plot point, so please do it. Because Nami is a character with a really odd backstory, and I feel like Oda will expand on Nami's lore. You know, go back to like all the prototype versions of One Piece, Nami has always been there. Nami has always been that OG character that Oda has always envisioned. So I do think Nami's backstory will get more fleshed out once we hit the Void Century, once we hit Emu or the Holy Land, because right now we have the whole Bell Mare plotline, right? Nami and Nojiko were in a village, they got attacked, Marines went, a hop, skip, and a jump later, Nami is found by Nojiko, and that's pretty much it, right? We do not know anything about Nami aside from that, so I do think we will expand on that if she gets taken hostage, and this could be like a repeat of Film Gold. No, not Film Gold. Film Strong World. Sorry, I get Strong World and Gold mixed up because in Strong World, we fight the Golden Lion and it's like, okay, yeah, it should be Film Gold, right? But either way, in Strong World, Nami does get kidnapped by Shiki and she's like, hey, Luffy, you can't win. Save me, you know? So I could definitely see that happening. I thought that was a beautiful scene. You know, one of the few scenes where I kind of like got choked up a little bit. But yeah, I think that'd be amazing. And funny enough, with film Strong World, we have been getting a lot of repeats from it here in this arc, right? With all the animals making a reappearance, with Shiki showing up. It's like, yeah, like maybe we do go that route, and Emu does take Nami. Why take Nami? I have no idea. Maybe Emu wants another girl, right? Maybe Emu is like, hey, Gunko's great, but I need another vessel. I need another vessel to possess taking Nami. That could be it. That could be it. I personally want the WG to at least get one win of some type, even if it requires Emu themselves to take it. But give them one win to make things interesting. Gorsei looked like jokes on Egghead. Let Mu show us the dominion of God. I love that. No, I agree. I completely agree. You know, my stance is that I love the villains. You know, not just One Piece, any series, I love villains because they're characters that will always lose. Right? I tell people, hey, I like the Holy Knights. And they're like, oh, Sai, one day, you know, Dragon's gonna beat them, Sai. When Dragon kicks their ass, you're not gonna love them anymore. Dude, that's not why I like them. Villains are always made to lose one day. But until they lose, they're gonna show us their best. And I hope they give us their best because there's nothing worse than defeating a lame villain. So I do hope that they get a win of some type and they up the ante. Maybe they don't win here in Elbaf, but instead, they win on a different front. You know, maybe we hear them take out, you know, maybe some pirate groups. Maybe they knocked back Cross Guild, or they're fighting back really well against Dragon's forces. I think they need one W. Or maybe they just keep on erasing, like, random countries like Leloucia, which wouldn't exactly be a W in my eyes. Like, Leloucia deleting it, sure, cool. That's awesome. But, you know, we didn't really care for anybody there. It's not like a big feat in terms of like, oh, like, you know, here's their power. They're so scary, guys. Like, yeah, like, dude, the thing with Lucy is that most of those people survive, by the way. You know, people just went with Sabo and they just lived. So it's like, yeah, we need something better. We need something from like a, you know, a physical feat, them displaying power in a different way, because that's just them relying on Vegapunk's weapon. So it's like, I don't know. Luffy's Conqueror's Haki disrupts Emu's ability to possess Gonko and Fraser from the curse mark. I don't know, I've been rewatching Naruto, me too. Yeah, no, maybe me too. I'm currently at the Obito Jinchuriki episode. So I'm getting close to finishing it. Of course, I am skipping filler. There's a lot of filler there, brother. You know, I'm not ready for the infinite Tsukiyomi filler. I mean, it would be cool if Luffy learned to duplicate himself to start flipping everyone back. I like that. I've always been a big fan of this theory. Luffy having his own Domi Reversi. Again, kind of like Naruto and how he was passing around the Nine-Tails cloak. I think Luffy could do that with the fire. I mean, the minute Oda brought in Bonnie in Gear 5th, I think anything's possible. Anything's possible. You know, pass the Nika powers to everybody, brother. Imagine it ends up being the power of love. Well, Brook knew her as a kid, so maybe not love. I don't know. You know, who knows how old Brook was at the time? Who knows how old Gunko eventually got? Maybe she does love Brook in a way. And then, of course, we had, like, that more adult version character that was screaming out father. We don't exactly know if that was Gunko or if that was, like, Gunko's sister or mom. There's a lot of mystery around Gunko right now. To me, Gunko saying something about Brook right before Imu took over is foreshadowing her redemption. I think the connection gets severed. It's kind of Mickey, but I think I love that term, dude. It's kind of Mickey. But I think the most likely outcome is that Imu has some sort of limit on how long they can maintain possession. Something like Gunko's body being unable to keep up with Imu's powers. Yeah, I like this. Like, maybe Imu is about to use a Chibaku Tensei, and then all of a sudden, Gunko's body, like, explodes, or maybe, like, you know, Haki just flares up, and then Gunko passes out. That would be kind of cool. You know, it would be a big flex on Imu, right? Imu just constantly outputting these crazy abilities, and then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, like, Gunko can't handle it, and then we win. I think that'd be very respectable on both fronts. Imu and the God Knights need a big W in Elbaf so that we can go to the final war with much more hype. I think it'd be really interesting and draw a cool parallel to Rocks if it turned out that Blackbeard was the one who was attacking the Holy Land, and Imu had to sever the connection because Blackbeard has made it to the Flower Room like Rocks did in the past. I would like the other three options, but to me, leaning towards someone or something severing the connection between Mu and Gunko, and eventually learning the connection between her and Brook, and whatever secrets she carries with her. Yep. It looks like pretty much everybody's on the same boat. And yeah, overall, I do think that the God Knights-WG need a solid win. And the funniest thing too is that, you know, we're talking about this in the current story, but there is a chance that maybe they get a W in the past. Like, maybe we see the WG beat King Harold. Maybe we see the WG really show out at God Valley. But yeah, you know, my stance on villains is that they're always meant to lose. I rarely see animes-mangas where the villain wins in the end. So that is why I love these guys, right? These are inherently losers. They were meant to be dealt with by the end of the story. But that is why I try my best to enjoy them while I can, and I just love seeing how they perform until the day of reckoning. But yeah, that is long-winded, and that is the video for today, guys. Let me know all your thoughts about these polls down below. Do you agree with some of them? Do you not agree with some of them? I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. I think that's the last poll video for this week, at least. We'll see, because keep in mind, 11:57 is right around the corner. So until then, I'll catch you guys later. Peace out. Hope you had a great time here, and stay safe, brother.